Hello and welcome to the Say It Sister podcast. I'm Lucy and
I'm Karen, and we're thrilled to have you here. Our paths crossed years ago on a shared journey of self-discovery, and what we found was an unshakable bond and a mutual desire to help others heal and live their very best lives.
For years we've had open, honest and courageous conversations, discussions that challenged us, lifted us and sometimes even brought us to tears. Now we want to share those conversations with you. We believe that by letting you into our world, you might find the courage to use your voice and say what really needs to be said in your own life.
Whether you're a woman seeking empowerment, a self-improvement enthusiast, or someone who craves thought-provoking dialogue, join us as we promise to bring you real, unfiltered conversations that encourage self-reflection and growth.
So join us as we explore, question and grow together. It's time to say it, sister. Hello, I'm Lucy.
And I'm Karen.
Today we're going to pick up from the last podcast where we introduced the idea of patriarchy, and we're really going to start looking at how patriarchy shows up in our systems and our workplaces and I guess all around us.
Yeah, let's talk about some of our own experiences as well, because we're both on our second careers and we've seen quite a few things by now, haven't we, Lucy?
Too many. I kind of fell into my career. It was in the energy industry, and I don't know anybody who actually says, when I grow up, I want to work in gas and electric. But that's where I ended up. And I don't think I even noticed that in my first job, all of the managers and leaders were actually men. It was 1999, and I guess it was just kind of expected. And I didn't even think to even challenge it or question it. But I did start questioning it later on in my career as it started to become quite obvious that I was trying to get ahead or other women around me were trying to get ahead, and it just seemed that much harder. And so, yeah, I guess it was then that I started seeing the patriarchy at work. Yeah, what about yourself?
Well, I went into PR and communications, which is obviously communications being more on the feminine side of things. The majority, I would say the large majority, were women. So I was in this sort of more feminine environment, which was a blessing for me, being someone who's highly feminine. What I did notice was that when I went to see clients, that there were mainly men. So as I was meeting with the CEOs and the top leaders to talk about their communication strategies and all this sort of thing, it was men. So I was like, okay, so this is sort of giving me signals here that yes, women can, it's a bit like women in a HR role, you put the woman in the HR role because it's touchy and feely and it's about emotions and feelings, similar sort of thing with communications. And so that made me start questioning what was going on, what was going on a bigger picture scale. And I ended up specializing in beauty because, again, you're working in the beauty industry, the CEOs were feminine, they were women. I saw good and I saw bad. I saw very aggressive, I'm going to call them aggressive, women who were like, shutting things down, shutting down spaces. I saw women who were very on board, very collaborative. So I was really lucky. I also saw men on either side as well.
Yeah,
I was really, really lucky because I got a lot of things were modeled to me very, very early on. And I would look and go, I want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. And so I had a steer, and I kind of followed those who were supportive and empowering, who were like, didn't see me as competition or a threat. And so this was so super crucial for me, I think, in terms of being a sensitive person in the workplace and having to find my way through what felt right. Yeah.
Yeah, do you know what? For me, as I started rising up in my career, most of the women who held the more senior positions, so I guess my role models, there wasn't much feminine energy coming out of them. They weren't aggressive, but they were really channeling their masculine energy. And they were my role models. I didn't see any listening or patience or kindness or empathy. In fact, they were almost quite robotic in their approaches. And so, yeah, I didn't have many role models, and I was really lacking them everywhere I looked. And interestingly, I got married at 22, being the perpetual good girl of what was expected. And it was very young to my peer group anyway. But I really didn't want to change my name. Now, I did legally. So, we didn't really discuss it, but there was something about my public life that I really didn't want to give up my name.
So is
Um,
Barkus just to check, is Barkus your original name that you've always had?
no, it's my married name.
Your
I
married
kept it.
name?
Yeah. Even though divorced and many, many years, I kept it, and just to feel like that tribal community with my children. So I've
Yeah.
told them now they can never change their name. They're not giving it up because otherwise I'm stuck with it. Um, but yeah, it took me a long time publicly to do that. And I think it was partly because I didn't want to be seen as just, a wife. But equally, I just moved into a new department and I was still just making a name for myself. And I just thought, oh, I've done so much good work. Now, if I change my name, it's just going to confuse everything.
Yeah.
But I did it and I went along with it. And then I went for an interview and I was about 23, so a year into it. And I was totally thrown off in the interview when I was actually asked whether I was planning on having a family soon.
Oh wow.
Um, and I said, no, I haven't. I've got plenty of time to think about that. But I wish in hindsight, I'd say, uh, why has my procreation decision got anything to do with my ability to do this job? But of course, I was 23. It was the year 2000. But I often wonder what would have happened had I said that I was planning to have a family straight away. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have got the
Yeah,
promotion.
I don't it. Yeah. It's
Um,
crazy, isn't it, to think that this is something that is, and yeah, and I suppose it was, and maybe it still is, maybe it's just hidden. But I mean, on the other side of things, I remember hiring someone who came in and she was heavily pregnant, like, huge. Literally, I can't remember how far gone down the thing. And I hired her because I really liked her and I thought she'd be the best person for the job. So she went off, had her baby, took her time off, and then came back. Um, because my brain just doesn't really work in that way. My brain is like, is this person right or not?
yeah.
Regardless of the gender, regardless of, the fact that she was heavily pregnant. And it was one of the best hires I ever made, basically. So
Yeah, there you go. And she was probably really loyal to you because others would have turned her down. So, yeah, being a decent leader, just seeing the person and the skills in front of you is always going to get you that kind of loyalty. And do you know what? I also remember, um, I was probably about 23, 24, and there were a few women which were now on my level. So I guess supervisor, team leader kind of level. So there was like this movement of women were starting to get promoted to a certain level. And there were a number of women that did get promoted to one level higher, and they were probably, 5, 6 years older than me. But it was the gossip that went around those hires, which
mm,
again, I sensed something was off, but I didn't realize because I'd never worked before in an organization, I didn't realize how off it was. And it was always the girls, so it was this internalized misogyny where, well, I wonder why they got the job. They must be sleeping with the boss, or they're too pretty to be taken seriously. And it was just, yeah, I was indoctrinated into it because I had no role models to turn around and say, "What are you doing? Running these girls down. We should be supporting one another." And so I have to admit, I took some of that internalized misogyny into the leadership of myself in my 20s, which is
yeah,
why I'm
yeah.
so impressed that you just saw this pregnant woman in front of you and just saw her. Because for me, I had no women around me challenging. So yeah, I kind of acted it out in my later career, and I felt really ill-equipped to deal with a lot of the issues that I was facing, and they were, predominantly women's issues. Like I remember one of my colleagues or one of my team members had a miscarriage, or there was another one going through a divorce. There was a domestic abuse case, and
Mm.
then there were people with endometriosis who couldn't come in, and I just didn't have the skills, and I also didn't want to be seen as favoriting women. So I just followed the process, and do you know what? I was about 28, and somebody actually said, "Oh, you're living up to your name, Lucy, Dragon Lady." And my heart sank because I thought I was bringing in my femininity into this, and I was being kind and considerate and, being sort of like a coach. But I was absolutely indoctrinated into how to be a woman leader in a patriarchal organization. And yeah, my nickname was Dragon Lady, and I
Wow.
still shudder at that now.
First and foremost, thanks for being so honest about it. I feel like this is a conversation that, women might be out there and men not thinking about these things and not aware. And it's really important for people like you and me to stand up and say, you know what, I have done that. And also, if you look at where you are today from where you were then, like we go on these journeys, don't we? And we
Yeah.
do what we need to do at the time. And then you look back and you go, hindsight is just a wonderful thing because you're like, I didn't handle that very well, or I allowed myself to be put into that position sometimes as well, where we have to go
Yeah.
and deliver something, and you kind of do it the best you can, but you're not really equipped with the tools. And I feel like part of the dialogue for today's world is to say, there is a woman in your team right now. She's going through divorce. One might have had a miscarriage. One has got ridiculously heavy, really debilitating periods. The other one is going through domestic abuse, and these are happening now. They're not old things that have not, it's not been eradicated. It's happening now. What is the plan to support her? What is the plan to support her in menopause, perimenopause? Because these are part of the conversations that, whilst they weren't around when we were, in our early profession, because we're now in our late 40s, those conversations weren't, it was about doing the work, getting on with the job. That was how we were schooled. That's how we were. We then had to find our own ways through that. And we've managed to do that as coaches. And, we've opened up to the feminine and empathetic listening and all of these different things that we've done for us to be here to have this conversation. But that wasn't an option back then, really, because who
Absolutely.
was going to
And
talk to you about it?
yeah, I remember growing up to whether it was Tampax or Body Form, I can't quite remember, but it showed all these girls doing sport. And I get the message of the advertising campaign, but it kind of suggested to me that even if you're having your period, just get on with life.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to stop you, just plow ahead. And actually, the reality is for most women, there is, whether it's physical stuff going on during that period or whether it's emotional stuff and tapping into a different part of your psyche that's going on, it really does affect women, and pretending it doesn't just because we've got a pad in is just ridiculous.
Or taking
And
tablets.
I now go around telling everybody, oh, having a perimenopause moment, because I just want to completely normalize it. I have no shame. So why do I need to keep it hidden?
Absolutely, and I love that. And for me, like patriarchy in the workplace, if I'm going into my old story, it was the biggest note that I had really was around the sports industry. And I worked for a football club, but as a PR in an agency, and I would go into these meetings and I would sit in the boardroom and I would talk and I wouldn't be heard at all because I was a woman. And then it would take, a male colleague to sort of reiterate what I'd said for it to be heard. But then they would send me down to the training grounds where the players were to get the players to do things outside of their contract. So I'd get, a photograph of one of the players for the club doing something, and we'd send that to the media. And then that would, create a load of coverage and a load of awareness. So it was like, okay, you don't want me in the boardroom, but you want me down there because you know that the players are more likely to do what I ask because I'm a woman and I'm a
Yeah.
young woman. And so it was like these two different worlds that I was sort of living in and trying to navigate as best as I could because I was like mid-20s then. So I was like 25, 24. So it was a young woman trying to work really hard to make it in her career because I was all about independence, seeing the world and living life. And I was dealing with these it's hypocrisy
Mhm.
really. And two very extremes. You don't have a voice here, but you can go do that. Off you go. If they sent a guy down there, they wouldn't get the job done. Can you see? So it was like
Yeah.
it
I've
was
got so many examples of that. There was one of my former clients, and I was in a meeting, and we were talking about engagement, and so it's part of their leadership development. And the staff Christmas party came up, and they wanted to do something, and they looked at the only woman in there, and said, "Oh, can you organise that?" And I looked at her and I said, "Have you got any experience in organising huge parties?" And she said, "No." And I said, what makes you all think that she's the right person? Have you actually, matched her skills up? And they all went really quiet because I didn't have to name it as, misogyny or even sexism, but it was there. And then there was another example of and it was an HR director, so actual, director in the title. And everyone would message her their coffee drinks order in the morning so she could bring the Costa or Starbucks order. And she'd been living with this for so long, and she brought it up in one of the coaching sessions, and we worked out a plan that was right for her to feel safe but speak her mind. But she was like, I have been doing this for years. I've been the note taker. I've been the one who organises the coffee, books the room, sends the minutes round. And she said, I'm just a team member, just as same as everyone else. So it's happening everywhere. And I guarantee you, if any of the listeners go into their workplaces, they will spot one or two things. Things are better now, but you will spot
It's
something
still happening. I
that
had a
is this
conversation
really low level.
still happening. I had a conversation with somebody who's very senior, very, very high up in the record um, industry. And yes, she's always the one. She's like, they always look at me to make, and she's very, very senior. And so I'm like, how is this still happening? I mean, this is a 40-year-old woman. It just, it just doesn't make sense to me. However, let's talk about our experiences with, our clients and the people that we've been working with, where it shows that there is a shift or a change, because I do feel like there's a lot of work still to be done. We have got the words now to be able to talk about things, whereas before it was very hard to have conversations because the language wasn't really there, but there is a language there that we can talk about patriarchy. So this is a really positive thing. And I feel like there's been a lot of restructuring happening for many global businesses, my clients included, where they're looking at their global operations, they're looking at restructuring, they're looking at flattening structures, they're looking at having more of a coach mentality coming through businesses. So things are shifting and changing. It's still quite early days, so who knows what the results of all this is going to be, but there is definitely a viewpoint that the way that things have been done doesn't really fit with the world that we live in today.
And do you know, it is interesting because um most of the clients who find me for leadership coaching or working with their teams, they come to me specifically because they want to create more engagement, more of a inclusive or shared leadership approach. And as we start talking and discussing a lot of this stuff, there's two stark things that come up. Firstly, most of them are what I call Gen X or the Zennials. So most of them were kind of reaching their teenage experience in the late 70s, 80s, 90s. So, but they equally had, they were operating or finding their first jobs in the last century. And the last century, so this is the other point, the last century was very much about hierarchy, structure, command, control. The word director was the job title of the most senior people, whereas the 21st century, things are shifting. And the word leader, senior leadership team. And so they don't want to be directors anymore. They don't want to direct people. They want to lead people. And so it's happening. It's within the narrative. And equally, a lot of these oldest millennials or the younger Gen Xers, they were already being included in discussions at the dinner table. Their education was a lot more about working in teams. And that's where they really enjoy things. So they want to go into the workplace and create that. So already you're just starting to see that there's just a rise that's coming up that almost like I'm not bashing the boomers here, but as the boomers are leaving, it's like, wait, now we get the keys to the kingdom. Now we can reinvent things.
Mm.
And so it's almost like the new leaders that are coming in are the bridge between the old and the new. And yeah, there's a lot more women in there. There's a lot more flexibility in working hours. There's absolutely no concern if the dad wants to take time off to go and pick the kids up from school or there's a sick day. There's still quite a lot of issues around male parental leave, but it just needs a few people to start doing it and then it becomes the norm. There's a lot more talk about menopause and mental health and emotional safety in work. So there's a lot of good things coming
Mm.
there. What about yourself? What are you seeing?
You know, the word that I absolutely adore that I keep hearing a lot is partner. Like, let me speak to my partner about that. And I'm like, oh, it just fills my heart with so much joy, this idea of like, partnerships and partnering together and like the respect that comes with that, and I work with some very senior women who have really are top jobs and they're bringing other women with them. The way that they speak to each other in the way that they actually support each other. Because I'll get a call from a senior leader saying, I've got this person in my team, they're absolutely amazing, but they're really struggling, emotionally struggling. She's too hard, or there's not enough emotion. Can you go in and can you support her behind the scenes? She needs you, and she needs your help, and she needs your empathy. And you know that they're very directive with what they want me, what they want from me, and then they let me go on the journey with the person, and then they don't ask anything else, and we just continue to work with each other. But it comes from such a place of like care and realizing that they can't be the ones to provide that support, that it needs to come from someone externally. So I'm seeing more and more of that, and that fills me with joy. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, for me, I had a real pivotal moment in my career from doing women's circles, women's groups, media partnerships, working independently with women, to being invited to go to Mexico, to the mountains in Mexico with Heineken, and to run a 3-day leadership program for the Exco team. And what unfolded there was my work in the corporate domain, which is much more holistic, much more about listening and tuning intuition. God, I can't say it. Coming into like, almost like the feminine side. And the majority of the leaders were men. So there was one woman, the rest were men. And so they were getting to sort of sense and tune in and connect to nature and listen to the woodpeckers, pecking on the trees outside, slowing down, resting, but still working on the business, still working on, what they wanted for each other and how they wanted to engage. And really it was about deepening the relationship. So it was very much a feminine brief of relationship and coming back into relationship and seeing each other differently, away from the desks, away from the usual up and out energy that we have. And one of the most amazing moments for me was when the CEO, he was tuning into the field, the space in between, and everybody had different roles, and we were using the CTI leadership model, and we were doing some deep embodiment work, and everybody was sat in different chairs, and they all had different roles and different parts of themselves to connect to. And the CEO said to one of his team members, speaking from the field of intuition, be gentle. And he said it from such a place of like, it was just profound for me. And literally, I had tears running down my cheeks, because he was coming from something, he felt into the energy in the room, and he knew that this person needed to be gentle and soft. And it was like just a moment when I thought, this is so needed in the world. It's needed everywhere. It's needed in our prisons. It's needed, in all the different institutions, where we can just take some time to listen, and to be gentle with each other, and to really see each other differently. And, it might sound quite idealistic from this point, but these are real busy, top people.
And this is the realm that you and I work in. And so to us, we get it. We know that when you take people out of their normal environment and start having real conversations, real connection, and be in relationship with one another, actually that's where the real business gets done.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time, because that's the work that we do. And I would say that it's still hard to convince some, but I'm starting to see that actually out there in the working world, most people get this stuff. And that's a real change that I've seen. So, even, saying that we're going to go away on a retreat, or we're going to go away for a couple of days and just go for a walk or break bread together. 20, 30 years ago, it would have been going out on a night out and getting really drunk and whatever. But now we're starting to say, actually, let's invest in the way that we spend time together as people first. So then we can build the relationships, and then we can do business. So, yeah, but it sounds idealistic, but actually it's everyday transactions.
And it's so important.
That's the world we deal in.
It's so important. And I think you get to a certain level and you can't really teach anybody, these people I see them and they're fantastic. And it's not about, and I had the same experience in my own career. It's not about teaching me about business. It's actually something else that people are looking for. Yes. It's about, how do we connect together? How do we see each other? That is the thing that we all need to work on, learn and grow into, because how we see each other as humans is the impact. It's going to make such a big difference to the
Well, you
workplace.
can all learn to do the smart stuff. There are hundreds of books out there. There's loads of blogs. You can go to school and learn how to do the smart stuff like spreadsheets, business plans, how to do a strategic plan, all of that kind of stuff. And they're the things that you can get a certificate for. The stuff that really makes organizations are the what we call the healthy behaviors. And actually, this is where as the patriarchy starts to lose its power, this is where the healthy stuff that really makes businesses and organizations and workplaces thrive really comes into its own. And so, yeah, I'm glad we went down this angle of what are we actually seeing out there in the real world, because there is a shift and there is a change, but there's still so much work to do. And actually, not enough people are talking about it. They're talking about, oh, we're really good at this stuff and oh, it's so hard. But nobody's actually saying, but yeah, what's it really like working in your organization? You know, how can you bring more heart or more kindness or compassion or intuition or patience? Um, and actually slowing people down to see the benefits, because it's all go, 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 isn't it? And actually, no, you slow down and then you speed back up again.
Absolutely.
So I'm really curious about how how do you think we can move the dial forward? How can we kind of power our clients or the workplaces up to almost bring down the patriarchy?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to say, you know what? It's never popular when you say slow down and listen, because we are not trained that way. And, so we have to go against something that we've been trained at. But I really feel like it's taking space differently, taking time, you know, breathing, listening to our instincts. I think without our instincts, we are really lost and we're floating down that river on a boat with no paddle. So how can we possibly direct ourselves? So for me, it's just literally coming back into myself and using cues on the outside as well, such as nature, such as music, the arts. I'm a big fan of poetry. People always laugh when I say that because I don't meet that many people who are really into poetry, but it's anything that captures me in the moment that makes me go, oh, I felt that. I really felt that. And then space sort of opens up in a different way. Like I just feel like I can drop into that space as opposed to the programming of up, out, forward, even like my body position's gone forward. I've lived my whole life foot on the front foot. And I would say, in the last 12 years, I've been trying to live it more on the back foot. And there's been times when I've been totally on the back foot. But these last couple of years, I haven't. I'm a bit more like going forward and then coming back again because now I'm a mom and my time is just different. And so I have a bigger responsibility. So I'm not as even footed as I was a few years ago, but that's okay because this is a space and time and I wouldn't change it for the world. This is what, so it's this constant coming back in. It's like, and then showing up from that place when I'm with my clients, when I'm having conversations with people, it can be even strangers on the street. When I show up from that back foot place where I'm really in more in my heart and I'm connected to my body, I'm different, I'm calmer. They feel that energy. That's when people are more likely to sort of tell you something or say, you seem really calm. How do you do it? You know, that for me is about passing along the information and the knowledge so that we all grow together. I'm doing this with my hands, but like it's like I'm creating something. I'm like, I'm crafting in the air here, but it's that you can't actually see anything in my hands, but feeling into something. It's that
Yeah.
feeling. What about you?
So I guess it's when I think about moving the dial forward, I think about all the things that I always keep, you know, the wisdom I pass on to my clients. And again, I always do um, ask them to put a meeting in the diary with themselves. And when they were like, "Oh, I don't have time," I'm like, "Do you know what? You can make time if your CEO is on the phone and wants a meeting. You can rearrange stuff. This, just even if it's 1 hour per week, where you literally turn your phone off, maybe go for a walk, go barefoot, do whatever it is, take a view, but just go with still thinking about work, but it creates some space for them to be able to just think differently, tap into stuff. And I often tell people to go up high, so on the top of a hill, or go and look at, out at the sea, because then you create some expansion and you can just notice something bigger. Because in the world of work, when you're in these little cocoons or your office or your meeting, and you're just talking like about the next topic for 5 minutes, it's just go, 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 go. And this just expands. The other thing that I always try and instill into people is, don't think of your colleagues as department heads or your boss or working for the competitor. Actually, just meet them as people first. And if you are having a meeting with them or a big meeting, actually just spend the first 5 minutes just saying, how are you?
Mm.
Genuinely, are you okay? Or if you, even if you're doing a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being awesome, just say, what number is everyone at today? Because you might be there as a 10 out of 10 with loads of energy, but if everybody else is there as a number 1 or 2, you're not going to get the results. So find a way to check in with your people and just see them first and foremost as adults, as people who are able to run their own homes, run their own lives, who have relationships outside. And yeah, ultimately, stop trying to direct them. They don't need it.
It's reminding me of the Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I don't know if you've ever read that book.
No.
It's what you were talking to earlier, where you put an hour in and you date yourself, and you go out on artist dates, and it's amazing. I did it when I went to London years ago, and it's an old book, but it's so relevant today. And I think it's just about taking that time out to actually go see things, do things, but you are making yourself the most important person in your own life in that 1 hour, so it's 1 hour a week. You date yourself, you do creative things. Again, it's about, opening up spaces inside. So it's reminding me of that book because it's a beautiful book. And I would suggest anyone who really wants to sort of start opening up to themselves in a different way, and also to the field of creativity.
Can
Julia
you repeat what it
Cameron,
was named?
Julia
What's
Cameron, The Artist's Way. It's
amazing?
brilliant. It's absolutely, and she talks about, she does this thing in the morning where you have morning pages. So in the morning you write 2 sheets of A4, free writing. You don't think about it. You just write whatever wants to come through, from you to the page, and you do that every morning. And it's like a little ritual, really. And again, that was a great thing for me at that point in my life when I wanted to reconnect to something, and just go into a deeper place. So I really recommend that book. It's a brilliant book, and there's lots of magic in there.
I can already imagine what's going on in the listener's mind, saying, I don't have time to do that. And like, actually, if you didn't sit in bed scrolling for those 10,
Oh,
15 minutes in the morning, you'd find time. So it's about really consciously using your energy. Um, and this is the whole point of where we say, that what's the patriarchal structures that are in the workplace. It's things like always on it, keep going, don't have time, keep building, keep creating, working long hours, rushing around. This is the narrative
yeah.
of the worker bee almost. And actually, you will be far more productive if you take a different energy. Just try it for a day. Just experiment one afternoon a week, maybe when you're working from home. Just see what happens when you start tapping into your almost feminine energy, but your intuition, and just see what comes. And I think that would be just an amazing experiment for any listener, just to play.
And I just wanted to add, because it's bringing up something to me, and it's this idea of giving yourself permission to relax, giving
Mhm.
yourself permission to take space in a different way, giving yourself permission to just say, okay, that's enough for today. I'm going to do this for me instead. Because ultimately, the person that you're meeting is yourself. I think we all do it, don't we? I'll get this job done, then I can take some time for myself. And then we go and get on the phone, or we do something that is counter intuitive, is actually taking us away from our intuition as a way to sort of breathe out, when actually we need the reverse. So it's
Yeah.
just giving yourself permission to do whatever feels good inside your body. Let's keep it as straightforward as that. But certainly permission to relax. As a busy woman, we need that first. That permission is so important.
And I'm going to give you one more nugget before we wrap up this session. Um, Stop thinking of it as time off work. when you're going on holiday or booking a day off or leaving early, start thinking of it as time on life,
Mm.
because you only get one of them. And so, yeah, this is about consciously thinking about what can I do with my time on life? So no more of that time off work. We're not having it anymore. But I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really loved chatting with you about this. I wasn't sure where we were going to end up, and it's been absolutely beautiful. I'm going to go get that book, and we will make sure we put it in the show notes as well. So do share that with me, Karen. But it's been a pleasure today. Thank you.
Lovely to see you too. And please come and join us on the Facebook page where we can continue any conversations with you. We'd love to do some more sharing. And thanks.
And we're now on TikTok. Say It Sister podcast on TikTok. So you can come and find little sneak peeks about the next episode there. Until next time. So thanks for listening, and we can't wait to welcome you next time.
Until then, use your voice, journal, speak, or sing out loud. However you do it, we hope you join us in
Saying It Sister.